What's up, guys? Four-wheeler doctor back again. Got another funny shirt on. Give you a second to read it. Alright, tonight we're working on a Honda Fourtrax 300. This is a 1997 model. And I think all these 300s are about the same. The only difference that I've seen is, good lord, this has been running the water a little bit. Seat weighs 100 pounds. The only difference I've seen is the way the frame's made right here under the gas tank. As far as the motors go, I don't really see that they're any different in them. But what we got with this one is this is going to be an engine removal video here. Then I'm going to tear this motor down and put it back together with a new crankcase. The drain plug is stripped out on this thing and can't seem to, we've drilled and tapped it, can't get one in there that won't leak. And right now it's got like a expanding rubber plug in it, and I'm not real sure it's going to come out of there. So went ahead and bought a crankcase, fairly inexpensive off the eBay, used one, and we're going to be swapping all the parts out. May end up doing a little top end, hone it, and put some rings in it. Really nothing wrong with the motor as far as running goes, except for you can't change the oil. So that could be a issue, especially with a snorkel on it, and you kind of want to do that from time to time. So we're going to start off by tearing this thing apart. This is a four-wheel drive model, the 300 FW TRX. So I'm going to start off with pulling this gas tank off, and really don't have a whole lot of plastics to take off. I think I don't know if I'm even going to have to take those floorboards off or not, but we're going to get the gas tank off first, which is very simple, but I figure what good is a engine removal video if you don't show all the steps. So we're going to pull this 12mm bolt out here. When you remove it, there'll be a plate right here with 4 12mm bolts. Make that 3 12mm bolts, maybe 2 more under here. We'll pull that off, and then we'll have to get our snorkel and unhook our airbox. So I'll get these off and cut the camera back on in a sec. Alright guys, got the gas tank out of the way, the little bracket right here. This one looks a little bit different because it does have a snorkel on it. Most of these will have a factory snorkel or intake that runs up from right here. It comes up beside the carburetor and then runs up under here. And what you do is you just loosen this clamp up, as I'm going to do here. This is what same way we're going to get this snorkel off, and pry up on that snorkel. It'll be kind of clamped around this little bar here, and pull it up between those two holes, and then you kind of wiggle it out. A lot of times they'll rub right here as you pull them out, but they will come out. This one, like I said, does have a snorkel on it. This is one I've done on here, so it's made to where you can take the snorkel off and not have to cut it. So I use a little coupler here. If any of y'all want to do a snorkel on one, this is a pretty good way to do it. So put that little coupler there, that way you can take it off and separate this piece from the rest of the snorkel for some type of repair like this. That thing is glued up in here, but actually I think I can get this whole thing off without pulling that tube completely out of the airbox. So I'm going to loosen this clamp up here. Got this clamp loose, but I don't think I'm going to be able to use it. And then I've got to remove these two, I think they're 10mm bolts from the factory. These look like they've been aftermarketly installed. And I dropped one. So then you can wiggle that boot off. Tilt this airbox up. It's going to probably work better if I have two hands to do this. Let me put the camera on the stand. There you go. Got the camera on the stand now. Alright, so slid that boot off of the carburetor there. Wiggle this airbox up, and it should slide up out of the frame, even with that snorkel tube attached. Let's say if yours is just factory, you're not going to have to fight with it like this, because you'll have the snorkel tube removed. This one's sealed up good, so I'm not going to break it loose. Alright, so that's how you get the airbox out. The next thing you need to take off is there's a clamp right here. The screw goes in from this side. As you can tell, I've done a few of these so I can kind of do it blind, but it's a Phillips head screw on that clamp. You want to loosen it up to slide the carburetor off. Say I could do this blind, but it's tough to do when there's mud crammed into the Phillips head screw. There it goes. So back that off a little bit, and that'll allow you to slide the carburetor off. I won't have to cut that zip tie there. That's not factory. Looks like it's holding some vent lines in. Alright, slide this thing up. Get the drain out of it. The fuel line. Set it over to the side. Got the carburetor loose from it now. Alright, next matter we're going to try to do is probably going to be the exhaust. It's two 12mm nuts here on the front, and you also have to remove, get over here on the side, this exhaust on this thing. I'm pretty sure this is a stock one. Yes, it is. Normally it has a bolt here in front of the right front tire, or right rear tire, I'm sorry. This one's missing all the bolts. So a bolt here over top of the muffler, and then a bolt here also holding it. If you loosen, or you take all three of those bolts out, those two nuts at the front up there, this whole exhaust can be fished out of here in one piece. So let me get these. Well, it looks like the two nuts at the front, and there's one bolt over top of the muffler. So let me get all these out, and then I'll cut the camera back on when I fish it out. Alright guys, got all the bolts out of this thing. So I'll flip this kickstart out to give me a little more room. So what you want to do is lift up on your muffler, kind of wiggle it forward a little bit. Might should have took the flange off the front first, and I didn't do that. Go that flange off the front up there. So with the flange loosed, you can slide this thing forward and rotate it. This will be clockwise. And you got to get it past your little decompression lever there. Pull back on it some. That didn't work. Hold on. I have to take this tire off. This is a big old fat tire on the back of this thing. It ain't giving me a whole lot of movement, or a whole lot of room for movement. There we go. There we go. So pick up on that end. It's tough to do from the muffler side, especially with this fat tire on it. And then you just slide everything back, and it'll come right out of there. Just like that. Slide it on the back. Don't let it get caught on the plastics, as it did. Come on, baby. Hung on the plastic there. Got a little persuasion from a screwdriver won't fit. Voila. You know, just like that. Snap your fingers and it comes off. Alright, got that loose. Next thing I'm going to try to do is probably just going to go ahead and unbolt this power wire from your starter here, as well as this one bolt here that holds the starter on, but it's the ground. We'll go ahead and take those two off and go over here to the side. We'll unhook this wire here for your stator. Actually just unplugs there. The other wire here is this the green one here. That is, I'm not sure what that's for. That's for the pickup to tell when to fire and all that stuff. And so that's the two wires from that side. We got a few more wires over here that we'll have to take off as well behind the little cover there. I'll probably do those next. So let me get this starter unbolted, and we'll jump to this little cover next. Alright guys, I got the starter unbolted. It's still in there. But now I'm going to take the top motor mount out here. It's 4 14mm bolts through the top, and then you can see the back side of these two here. And then there's also a 14mm that goes through the top. You have to put a nut on a wrench on one side to hold the nut. But I'm going to pull those out real quick. Cut the camera back on in a second. Alright guys, next thing we need to do is get these wires unhooked from this side. There's a little thin metal cover over here that covers all these wires up, the reverse and neutral light. And it's got an 8mm bolt on it. And just take that thing out. This one's got a aftermarket floorboard on it, so it makes it a little tougher to get to, but you stick a wrench in there, you can get it loose. So back that bolt out. And pull your thin cover off, and then you can pull the wires out. They run through a little channel here in the side of the case, and also it also helps to remove. There's 2 bolts in the side of the crankcase here, or the side cover. One right here directly below the pull start. It's got a clamp on it that holds one of these wires we're dealing with. And so I'm going to take it off, and then the one right below it also holds a clamp. That one's directly below the oil checker, dipstick, I guess you could call that. So we'll remove both of those completely, and that will loosen the wires up, at least on this end. And then once you get those loosened up, you can just pull these 2 wires out. They just have little barrel connectors on them right here that make a connection. There's actually one more wire up here toward the front that also has a barrel connector. Let's see if I can get it to slide off of here. That one's a little bit tighter. There it goes. Got that one off. And then there's a 10mm bolt down here with the reverse lever. Have to put a ratchet on that and back that off. And when you do that, so your cable will come off, and once you get these bolts out here, your cable will come off and your wires will come off, and you'll be done with the wiring, at least on this side. So let me get those pulled the rest of the way off, and I'll cut the camera back on the next step. Alright guys, I believe that's all the wiring on the bike. Got these off now. I just stuck the bolts back in here. I'm going to cut this zip tie on this crankcase vent line. Yours is probably going to look different than this. I think normally it has a hose that comes up and bends back, ties into this little hose here that's right below the carburetor. And since this one has a snorkel on it, they have it run up all the way to the top. So cut that off, get that crankcase vent off, and I think that's going to be the only other thing that's holding this in, aside from the motor mounts and the front differential and the rear drive shaft. So we're going to start looking at getting this front differential at least out where we can see it. I'm going to start by removing this 10mm bolt here on this cover, and I believe there's 2 other bolts toward the front. I'm going to have to get a flashlight and scoot this thing back a little bit so I can get up there to it. So I'll cut the camera back on once I get that rear one removed, and when I find the 2 front ones that I got to take out. Alright guys, the bolts for the front cover, or that front drive shaft shield, God, it's right behind that control arm. Let me see, like there, the bolt right there. And there's also one on the other side. You got to take both of those out. They're 10mm head bolts, and that will expose the drive shaft, and it makes taking the drive shaft out a little easier if you get those out of the way. So let me pull those out, and I'll cut the camera back on right before I loosen up the drive shaft. I mean the differential bolts. Alright guys, now we're going to get in here and get this differential out, or at least slid forward. This is a little bit different than some of the other ones, in that the bottom diff bolt's actually accessible from the bottom here, from the bottom of the bike. Most of them you can stick an extension in the over there on the right side of the bike and get this bolt out, but you can't do that in this case unless you take the A-arms off, and we're sure not doing that. So take two wrenches, 14 millimeter, get that off. Then I'll probably cut the camera on when I get back up top. I've got this thing jacked up so I can get under here to it. Cut the camera back on and get back to the top because we've got a few more bolts up there. So let me get this one loose and then I'll jump to the top. Alright guys, got that 14 out down there. Next one you need to take loose is this one here that's hooked to this little bracket up front. These are two 12 millimeter bolts up front here. You can see those. And then this 14 millimeter on this side, and I believe it's a 12 on the other side of that bolt there. See if I can zoom that bolt right. It's super bright. That bolt right there. That's what you got to take off. And then there's also one other bolt here on the top. Let's see if I can get in there to it too. It's right there. Another bracket and another 14 millimeter bolt. I'll probably just put a extension on the impact and run that one out of there. So let me get all that out, and I'll cut the camera back on right before I slide the differential forward. Guys, that top bolt on that differential does have a little sleeve on it, so make sure you hang on to that and put it back in there when you get ready to put the diff back in. I got everything loosened up on it, well, at least all the bolts out of it. And what I normally do now is take a small crowbar and stick in here by the differential. Usually try to lift up on it first just to make sure it's broke loose from the mounting brackets, and then kind of roll this thing forward, and you can see it's pulling the drive shaft out. The drive shaft's out completely on this. Oh, we might need us a pan under this thing. We're just pouring some nasty stuff out there. Honda puts solid drive shafts in these things. Well, actually solid drive shafts in all of their bikes. Makes it tough getting them out from time to time. I guess they're strong. The ones like in a brute force there, actually they telescope on you, so they'll come out a whole lot easier than this. You don't have to do anything with the differentials and sliding all that stuff around. You just reach in there and pull in on the, goodness gracious, this thing's leaking oil everywhere. Just pull in on the differential or pull in on the shaft, and it'll collapse down and come right out of there. It makes it pretty easy. So let me slide these things out. There we go. Alright, so hopefully that won't make too big of a mess, because this is gear oil and it's some nasty smelling stuff. Alright, so we got that loose. Next thing we're going to need to work on is, for one thing, take spark plug wire off, because it won't come out with the spark plug still hooked up. Now we need to remove the other motor mounts. We got this top one off earlier. The one other motor mount is back here at the back, another 14 millimeter bolt. It's a pretty long one, and then there's a few 14 millimeters down here on the bottom. I'm thinking you have to take that whole bracket off. There's 3 on this side, and I'm assuming 3 on the other side. I think you have to take that whole bracket off in order to let the engine slide over. Yeah, we got 3 over here as well. See them down in there. We're going to try to pull this thing out on the left side. Hopefully it's going to come out there. You guys will probably have it a little easier since you don't have these floorboards on yours. But I'm going to have to kind of pick it up, wiggle it out, try to get it. It's right there on the floorboard right there, so that might be an issue. But I'm going to give it a shot, because I really don't want to take the floorboards off. But alright, let me get the impact ready, and I'll start pulling some of these lower and the rear motor mount bolts off. Cut the camera back on right before I try to wiggle this thing out of here. Guys, I also forgot one more motor mount bolt. It was covered in grease and I couldn't see it. Right here on the bottom, this thing's got more motor mounts than anything I've ever seen in my life. So we got one there, one there, one there, and one in the front. So they weren't going to let this motor go anywhere. I think that's a 14.2. I can't really tell from the caked up oil that's on it, but I'm thinking that's what it is. So I'll get that one out, and then we'll be ready to lift this thing up and see if we can slide it out. Alright guys, got all the bolts loose. I think the only thing I need to remove is this vent line on this front drive mechanism up here. This is a 4-wheel drive motor. And what I'm going to try to do is slide this thing forward a little bit until I can get this drive shaft to slide off. This bike didn't have the clamp on the drive shaft boot, but you will have to loosen that clamp up and so you can slide it back and get to that joint. So kind of pick up on the motor a little bit and slide it forward at the same time. Look in here and see what this drive shaft's doing. Usually you can stick a screwdriver in there and pry back on it and get it to come loose. I think I've gotten it loose, but our motor's still got to go forward. So let me see if I can get over here on this side and pick up on it a little bit and slide it forward. Jenga. Sorry about that, guys. Hope you had your helmets on, because that could have been a rough ride. Move this carburetor up out of the way and slide this thing up a little bit more, or try to at least. There we go. So it slides out of the bracket right there, as you could probably see, and the drive shaft is just halfway hanging over here. Pry it on back. Drive shaft's off. Now it's off. Okay, what the plan is, you got to kind of pick this thing up and rotate it as it comes out. Hopefully I can do this and not flip the camera over. But my track record on that is not real good. I usually always flip the camera over, so keep your fingers crossed. If worst comes to worst, I may have to remove this over here. But there again, keep your fingers crossed on that too. I believe it's going to come out of here. I tell you, it probably would have made it a little easier if I took that shifter off, but hey, it's too late now. So keep on kind of rotating it, picking it up out of there. Wiggle it around your plastic here, because this plastic doesn't want it to come out. And then just sit it down on the floor, just like that. Alright guys, that's all there is to that. Stay tuned for another video of tearing it apart. Y'all have a good night.